What is up, my comic comrades? Today we continue our King in Black coverage by breaking down issue 2 of King in Black, Planet of the Symbiotes. We already covered issue 1 of the series, which you could find right here, but issue 2 has one story that's all about a Captain America Godzilla, if you could believe it. If you're saying, come again? That's right, Captain America Godzilla. Let's talk about it. Jumping right in, the issue starts off with us seeing a giant freaking Godzilla-looking monster with an American flag painted on his chest. As the caption says, there comes a time in every man's life when he looks back on the things he's done and the choices he's made, and he has to answer for himself. One question. Am I a monster? As again, we see a giant freaking kaiju tearing through the city saying USA. We also see a soldier jump out of a plane towards the monster with some sort of rocket launcher on her back. We then see a caption under the kaiju saying, Corporal Todd Ziller, United States Army, willing test subject for a ramshackle super soldier knockoff. He's usually the American kaiju, because why wouldn't he be? That's right, as well-versed Marvel fans knew off the bat, this is the American Kaiju, aka Marvel's Godzilla, aka a Captain America wannabe turned Godzilla. So to elaborate on that caption a little more, like it said, the US Army chose Corporal Todd Ziller as a test subject for a procedure by Project Troubleshooter, which was America's latest division in creating human weapons. As one would assume, this was yet another attempt to recreate the famous Abraham Erskine super soldier serum that gave Steve Rogers his powers. But the problem was, like so many other failed attempts to recreate the super soldier serum, there was gaps in the formula. So they used reverse-engineered versions of several transformative substances to fill in the gaps, like mutant growth hormone, gamma enhancements, Pym particles, and the Connors formula. Then once given to Ziller, it turned him into a giant dinosaur-like monster very similar to Godzilla, at which point he was given the nickname American Kaiju. So essentially, this is a Captain America gone wrong, and I gotta say, it's pretty dope because I love giant monsters. Anyway, back to the story. Todd Ziller, while continuing his rampage through the city, says to himself, here's the thing, I wanted this. I wanted the power. Life as Todd Ziller was empty. Shallow. I wanted purpose. I wanted to manifest destiny, as he picks up a train and throws it at symbiote dragons while saying USA. He continues to say, so I volunteered for this, as he bites the head off of a symbiote dragon. Meanwhile, we see the soldier that jumped out of a plane with a rocket launcher on her back has landed on top of Ziller, as we continue to see the American Kaiju go head to head with several symbiote dragons, with Todd saying, this is what the military wanted me to be, or at least what the military was fine with me being. America wanted another Star-Spangled Deliverer. Sometimes America cuts a few corners. I am American. I love being an American. I love this country wholeheartedly, more than I have ever loved anything, and I want to do good things just like America. But isn't there always a but? As he continues to rip dragons out of the sky, crushing them and biting off their heads. Ziller then says, they set me loose on the symbiote dragons, because yeah, symbiote dragons need to be dealt with, for the good of everyone and everything. Except maybe the symbiote dragons. But then out of nowhere, a two-headed symbiote dragon sneaks up on the American Kaiju as the soldier continues to climb on his back. As Todd, or the American Kaiju, continues to fight the double-headed dragon, which is causing destruction and devastation all around him, the soldier says to herself, almost there. Hang in there, Todd, while holding some sort of rocket launcher. Todd then says to himself, grocery stores, hair salons, urgent care, libraries, schools, hospitals, street fairs full of families. I will leave tens of thousands of lives ruined. And who is responsible for all of this destruction? Is it the dragons? Is it America for dropping me out of a plane? Is it America for turning me into this? If I take a harsh look at myself, here's the truth. I wanted this. I asked for this. I volunteered. There's no one else to blame but me. As he bites off one of the double-headed dragon's heads and shoves a building down the other one's throat. Right after he defeats this dragon, the soldier fires a rocket launcher into the back of his head, which triggers him to slowly transform back into his normal self. He then says to himself while transforming back, has doing the things I've done make me a monster, or am I a monster for wanting to be one in the first place? Then the soldier just looks at Todd saying, you did great, buddy. Let's get home. And when you wake up, Mott sticks on me. As the story ends. Dude, this first story was awesome and completely well done, and just so action-packed the entire time. Admittedly, I'm a sucker for kaijus. I love giant monsters, so this was a perfect precursor to get me even more excited for Godzilla vs. Kong. To me, the American Kaiju is one of those Marvel characters that needs his own series, or at least a mini-series. We've only seen him a few times in the past. I believe he only has 6 appearances in all of Marvel, so many people might not be familiar with the character. But this is a perfect example of how cool he is. The military literally brought him in to destroy symbiote dragons that were invading Earth. That's insane. Imagine seeing that in the MCU. Anyway, all I'm saying is I want to see more of this Godzilla Captain America amalgamation character. So Marvel, if you're listening, at least make a miniseries. Anyway, on to the second story. It opens up with Hobby Brown talking to his girlfriend Mindy at a restaurant, saying, look, I know it's a lot. She then tells him, definitely, you are definitely a lot. Teaching yourself to be an inventor was an idea. The Prowler was an idea. You always have an idea. That's the trouble with you. As we find out, he's trying to tell her about a new idea, while saying, you wanted me to give up Prowler? Done. You wanted me to use my talents for the real world, and I did it. She then says, I want you out of the suit, Hobby. He then tells her, the suit's gone, baby, I swear, no more Prowler. Ever. But this other thing, and before he can finish his sentence, they see symbiote rain starting to infect people outside of the restaurant. Hobby, knowing right away this is the same stuff Venom is made of, tells everyone in the restaurant, get away from the windows. Somebody kill the music in here and close the curtains now. But some rich dude is like, why should we listen to you? I own 3 condos on the Upper East Side. Then on the next page, we see a symbiote crash through the window, infecting that rich douchebag. As the symbiotes start rampaging through the restaurant, infecting people, Hobby and Mindy hide behind a booth, where he tells her, listen to me, you need to go to the physical plant. There's a basement there with junction boxes. They won't go there. With all these moving targets, if you're quiet, they won't come looking for you. Mindy says, for us. You mean for us, Hobby. What are you gonna do? He then says while clicking a button on his collar, you know how I just said I wouldn't be putting the Prowler suit on again? Maybe put a pin in that. And on the next page, we see him suit up, starting to attack the symbiotes. One thing leads to another, and the symbiotes eventually throw him inside of a cell phone store. But knowing the symbiotes are sensitive to sound, he hacks all the phones. Then proceeds to turn the audio outputs all the way up, blasting the symbiotes off the civilians. Meanwhile, we see Mindy and several others went to the basement Hobby told her about. Hobby calls her asking if she's okay. She says, I'm fine, but those things, they're all over the city. As we see him talking to her back at his apartment, opening up a closet, revealing a winged jetpack, helmet, and gauntlets, saying whatever this mess is, I know Spider-Man is in the middle of it. Then on the next page, he continues to say, and the Hornet's gonna help him clean it up, as we see him fly away with his new gear, taking on the new alias, the Hornet. And that, my friends, is the end of Planet of the Symbiotes issue 2. The second story was pretty good. It's a key issue, actually. It's the first appearance of Hobby Brown as the Hornet, so collectors are definitely gonna wanna pick up this issue. It's a nice little fun read that shows us how Hobby became the Hornet, but the highlight for me in this issue by far was the American Kaiju story. But even the issue as a whole is just really solid. I'm just a bit of a sucker for Kaiju, so that story stole the show for me. But what are your thoughts? Did you like this issue? Are you digging this series as each issue contains 2 short stories? Let us know in the comments. And just like that, that brings yet another episode of Variant to a close. But if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to check out this one right here. And if you like all of our content, as always, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. It always helps out the channel. But other than that, I'll see your lovely faces next time when I talk about all things comics.
Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I want to cover the Planet of the Symbiotes, at least the second issue, the first part of the second issue, as part of King in Black. Okay, here's something to specify with regards to Planet of the Symbiotes. This is one of Marvel's attempts at an old throwback comic, and it's actually not bad. It's really good. It's really good. The one with American Kaiju, this is basically, you know, Marvel's version of Godzilla. It's cool, it's interesting, but the Planet of the Symbiotes really is just an anthology series, right? It's just a book that collects a series of smaller stories, which I think is a genius idea, mostly because of the fact that it gives us the ability to see characters that we don't normally get to see or that we haven't seen in a long time, and then like an attempt to see whether or not, you know, we're interested in seeing anything more from them. The first issue, I would say the big standout star of the first issue was probably Scream. I've never cared about Scream, so I didn't really much care about the fact that she was in that book. I was like, moving on, and that was basically it. But American Kaiju, here's the thing, Todd Ziller, American Kaiju was a great concept that was terribly executed, right? So the idea here with American Kaiju, to kind of backstep this a little bit, in fact, there really isn't a whole lot that goes on in this comic, so we can just kind of peruse through the comic or peruse through this story as I'm kind of giving you guys some backstory here. So the idea behind this is that for those of you guys who remember when Marvel launched the original, not really the original, the 2015 Secret Wars event, in the aftermath of that, we got all new, all different Marvel, which was not all new and it was not all different. It was basically the same thing with a few couple change-ups, right? So Marvel basically turned a branding initiative into a BuzzFeed article, just complete and total clickbait. And so the result of this is that a lot of us were pissed, but then other people were mad because they didn't like the way that Marvel handled a lot of their stories. But at the outset of that, we basically got all new, all different Avengers. And what you had here was that instead of you having advanced idea mechanics, you had Avengers idea mechanics. And that was designed to build on the idea that Robert DaCosta, who was previously an X-Man, had basically bought advanced idea mechanics and taken it over towards the end of Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers. And it was really Hickman just kind of wrapping up all these loose threads and kind of bringing all the various groups that existed out there, superheroes especially, in an attempt to like find a way to stop the incursions, and it didn't work. Just talking about that makes me want to go back and cover Avengers and New Avengers again, but we just finished remastering it and we're never going to remaster it again. So now I just have to go back and read it again, right? I cannot remaster a remaster. That's just one step too far, right? That's just, you're just surfing for views. That's all that is. You're just surfing for YouTube money. But nonetheless, the idea was that with this particular team functioning the way that it was, there was yet another attempt at Marvel to bring back the Super Soldier program. Now, Marvel does that occasionally originally. You go back to the old like Abraham Erskine Captain America comics, and you have the idea that like, Steve Rogers was injected with the super soldier serum, and then Abraham Erskine died with the formula before it could be passed on to anybody else, and so the formula itself was essentially lost. After that, you just had like a whole host of attempts to duplicate the super soldier serum or make something similar to it. So like that's where the Sentry Robert Reynolds comes from. That's how you got all the Weapons Plus weapon programs, right? So like Weapons 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to like Weapon X or Weapon 10 with Wolverine, and even the ones beyond that, Phantom X, the Stevra who were just clones of Emma Frost, different things like that. The problem that the all-new Avengers ran into was that with all the knowledge of Abraham Erskine gone, and even the people who came after Abraham Erskine, so like Carol Hines and Professor Thornton and Abraham Cornelius, who were the three individuals that were the most responsible for turning Wolverine from Logan into Wolverine and the Weapon X project, and even as part of Weapons Plus, Canada's Department K, all that kind of stuff. Because all that information was gone, what the all-new Avengers basically had to do was kind of Frankenstein together a super soldier serum of sorts. And so what they ended up doing was combining the knowledge they did have of the super soldier serum, what limited knowledge they did have, alongside the mutant growth hormone, PIM particles, and the Connors formula, which turned Doc Connors into the Lizard, and then basically injecting this crazy cocktail into Todd Ziller, which turned him into this Godzilla-esque character. Now, one of the reasons why you never really saw anything come after that, or really come out of his character, is you did have the storyline in issue number 9, which ran into issues 10, and I think even as far back as issue number 7, is that he did go on a mission to like rescue Rick Jones, right, the friend to the Incredible Hulk, and so on and so forth. But for the most part, there was a lot of disdain towards all new, all different Marvel from a lot of older fans who felt betrayed, and a lot of newer fans who had no idea what the heck was going on because it just felt so far removed from what they expected to see in Marvel Comics, especially those coming from the movies who expected like the movie adaptation in comics, and then taking their lead from a lot of fans who didn't really like all new, all different Marvel. It turned people off to the concept, and so it was kind of like, okay, this thing exists, moving on, and just sort of running on to the next thing. Now, I personally didn't have a whole lot of grudge with all new, all different Marvel. I really didn't have a lot of beef with it. It was just kind of a thing that was there, and so I enjoyed it. It was fun. It had great moments and it had bad moments, just like every single comic book era in the history of comic books in general. But that was kind of the story of Todd Ziller, right? Now, in terms of this, right, like what's going on here and why he's in this place, it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward, right? He was basically just released by the federal government because he's one of the few beings that looks like he can stand against the power of the dragons of Null. Now, a lot of this comes down to like the nature of the powers he possesses, right? So because he's essentially kind of a Frankenstein of these different elements of Marvel's science division, more or less, he has kind of like the healing ability of the Lizard. He's got the ability, or at least he does grow in size, like we see with Hank, with PIM particles when Hank Pym or Scott Lang or any one of those guys ends up becoming like Giant Man, more or less. But he's also got powers that are similar but not exact to Abomination and the Hulk, right? So he has like the strength level of the Hulk along with like the aggression and rage of Abomination, but it's not limitless strength, right? It's not like the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. It doesn't necessarily include that thing just because of the fact that he was exposed to gamma radiation treatments, right? So he doesn't really have the same exact principles of the Incredible Hulk. But just by sheer size and strength alone, he's more than enough to go against these dragons. Now, at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference here because we know that like the guy who's leading all this Null is powerful enough to conscript, celestials into his bidding, right? So anybody who can conscript celestials, these cosmic gods that create life, is certainly going to be far more powerful than a hybrid of Giant Man and the Incredible Hulk and Abomination and somebody who's on mutant growth hormone to like amplify their powers even further, right? So, the guy's strong, he's wildly capable, but he's basically just Marvel's version of Godzilla. Now, I doubt you're gonna see anything more from him out of this, right? You may see a little bit more over the course of King in Black, but this little book here is not written by Donny Cates. So it's not as though Donny Cates sees American Kaiju Todd Ziller as somebody akin that can actually like show up consistently over the course of the Venom run. And even if he did, the Venom run's coming to an end, right? We know it's coming to a close with like maybe a story arc after the end of King in Black, and then that's basically it. That's it for Donny Cates' run. What he works on next, I don't know. I don't care. I'll read it regardless. But yeah, this is basically the idea behind Todd Ziller. I mean, he is like super hyper patriotic, which you guys can tell just by looking at what's going on here. He's like a hyper patriot, right? So he's like, America never makes any mistakes or anything like that. America's always, the way to go. He's very similar to Frank Simpson to Nuke in that way. But again, there's not a whole lot going with this story. It's literally just like, it's like a 7-issue story where it's like, we have Marvel's version of Godzilla who's just in New York tearing some stuff up, and he feels a little bit bad that he's destroying things that belong to people, but it's all in greater service, it's all in service of a greater whole because he's just destroying the symbiote dragons of Null, and that's cool. I will say this, his design is amazing, and one of the big shames is you never really see anything come out of him. It'd be different if this was back in like the 1970s when like Fin Fang Foom was like a great big huge deal. Then sure, if you had been created back then, you'd see a lot of prominence with this character, but for the most part, you don't really see anything going on with him, right? He's just kind of here and he's doing some things, and then that's basically it, and then the story basically just kind of ends, right? It's like ending ... and that's basically it. We might see a follow-up, I'm not really sure, but I doubt it, right? Because he ends up just kind of reverting back into his human form, and then that's effectively it. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. If you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys want me to cover the original story where we first saw American Kaiju, I can do it. It's not gonna kill me or anything. It's a one-off story, right? So I mean, we can do that on like a random Saturday or like a Sunday or something like that. If you guys want that, let me know. I mean, I don't have any problem doing it. I think it'd be kind of cool, right? So just leave some comments down below, and I will catch you all later. Peace.